Buckingham Palace has announced the death of Queen Elizabeth II, the longest reigning monarch in British history.
The Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen Consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow.
It has pleased Almighty God to call to his mercy our late Sovereign Lady, Queen Elizabeth II, of blessed and glorious memory, by whose decease the crown of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is solely and rightfully come to the Prince Charles Philip Arthur George.
And with the passing of the second Elizabethan age, we usher in a new era in the magnificent history of our great country, exactly as Her Majesty would have wished, by saying the words, "God save the King."
We, therefore, publish and proclaim that the Prince Charles Philip Arthur George is now, by the death of our late sovereign of happy memory, become our only lawful and rightful liege lord, Charles III.
I too now solemnly pledge myself, throughout the remaining time God grants me, to uphold the constitutional principles at the heart of our nation. And wherever you may live in the United Kingdom, or in the realms and territories across the world, and whatever may be your background or beliefs, I shall endeavor to serve you with loyalty, respect, and love, as I have throughout my life.
King Charles III has not had a life without challenges. Reaching the point as a cherished and accepted king was not simple. In fact, Charles holds the title as longest heir apparent in British history. His great journey towards kingship is one unparalleled in British history.
Her Royal Highness is the proud and happy mother of a prince. The salute is fired, and in the monarch's home lies the infant boy who will one day be king. On Saturday, the eminent gynecologist Sir William Gilliot was called to the palace for the most responsible case in even his career. By his advice, Sister H.M. Rowe was chosen midwife. The whole country knew that the baby would soon be born. All day on Sunday, people waited outside the palace, including phlegmatic pressmen with whom it is a point of honor to show no excitement. And all day there was no announcement. It was after 10 at night that those who waited, and they were very many, heard the tremendous news, a royal baby and a boy. Radio gave no advantage to watchers at the palace. The glad tidings went out everywhere.
This is the BBC Home Service. It has been announced officially from Buckingham Palace during the past hour that Her Royal Highness, the Princess Elizabeth, Duchess of Edinburgh, was safely delivered of a prince at 9:14 p.m. today, and that Her Royal Highness and her son are both doing well.
The press agencies were covering the world. The miracles of modern communication spanned the globe. Unto us a child is born, and no ordinary child, a prince. For the moment, all other news took second place. The morning newspapers went to press with one of those rare, warm stories that touch every heart.
The early years of marriage have set the seal on the happiness of the princess and her husband. The blessing of children has come not only to enrich their lives, but also to establish securely the line of succession. In Prince Charles, the public has acquired a new popular subject of interest, of whom some delightful pictures have been taken. We should like to see more of him, but the insatiable demand of the public has had to bow to the princess's very proper determination that her son shall not be spoilt by publicity.
From a young age, Charles was very well aware of his own destiny. The lives of his mother and father changed radically upon the death of King George VI. Princess Elizabeth ascended to the throne and became Queen Elizabeth II.
In the city that was so long an independent and powerful part of the realm, hers by right of succession, the Princess Elizabeth has agreed to accept the crown and rule as queen.
Of Elizabeth and Philip's children, the young Prince Charles was the only one to attend the coronation, as Princess Anne was considered too young at the time. Charles, sat beside the Queen Mother and Princess Margaret, looked eagerly over the balcony, watching his mother solemnly take the coronation oath and the crown bestowed upon her head. A moment he would treasure as he became heir apparent. His childhood is said to have been a solitary and lonely one. His mother and father busy with their duties, an endless round of royal engagements, official visits, and tours across the globe.
The royal couple proceeded up Broadway, the Canyon of Heroes, bombarded by tons of ticker tape, millions of cheers, in what was the most enthusiastic reception anywhere in Elizabeth's 10-day North American tour.
His relationship with the Queen, his mother, was said to be detached, and with his father, Prince Philip, it was particularly difficult. It is said that the young Charles often felt he disappointed his father, not quite living up to his father's strong personality. Prince Philip did take a particular interest in teaching Charles the outdoor life, getting him to fish and hunt. A running theme throughout their relationship was the aim to get Charles to become more of a man, perhaps more of a leader, knowing the nation's future expectations for the then monarch in waiting.
Focus on a famous prep school. Cheam is in the news on the first day of a new term, and young hopefuls arrive with their parents and relatives to carry on with that exhausting process called education. Accent on luggage, not forgetting tuck boxes and toys. Toys, well, super yachts and jet-propelled planes, one should say perhaps. It's a wizard idea to bag your place in the classroom at once. Everybody here? Call over by Mr. Beck, joint headmaster of the school. Now there's one new boy still to arrive, and here he comes with his mother and father. The headmaster receives the royal party. What, no tuck box? Well, there's plenty of room in that trunk, no doubt. Prince Philip was a pupil here. His son looks happy to be following in father's footsteps.
Even in his education, Prince Philip was more determined than ever to toughen up young Charles, and he forced the Queen's hand, deciding to send Prince Charles to Gordonston. It was a tough and competitive school, but it was also extremely caring in Philip's day, and he believed strongly that it made him into the man he was, the man who had married the Queen of England. So he believed it must make Charles a man who could be king. Charles broke a royal tradition, and instead of going straight into the armed forces after finishing school, he decided to pursue higher education straight away, and accepted a place at Cambridge University.
The great court of Trinity College, Cambridge, and the royal procession arrives. The minis serve to underline Prince Charles' hope that his time at Cambridge will be uncluttered by deference to his royal status. Lord Butler, the master of Trinity, set a precedent by meeting him, but otherwise the college, founded by Henry VIII, welcomed him with the informality he obviously hoped for. The prince, who'll be 19 next month, will be reading archaeology and anthropology. The first Prince of Wales to attend the university for 100 years, he'll be living in a room in New Court, and it was here he met a friend of his, third-year student Robert Woods, son of the Dean of Windsor.
a stroll to the backs for a look at the gently flowing cam. In the Elizabethan dining hall, lunch 3 bob. There he saw windows dedicated to his great-great-grandfather and his grandfather, who were both up at Trinity.
Prince Charles, the future King of England, becomes a college freshman. Lord Butler, Master of Trinity, greets the Prince, who will major in archaeology and anthropology. The heir to the throne looks like his mother and walks like his father.
He quickly found his feet and particularly enjoyed performing on stage, a useful skill for a future king.
I'm letting out a little slack now. Yes, and taking up the strain. This is most exciting, ladies and gentlemen. I've never seen anything quite like it before. I think I got quite a large one here. It's very, very large indeed.
During his time at Cambridge University, Charles was introduced to his first love, Lucia Santa Cruz, daughter of the Chilean ambassador. There was an instant attraction between the two of them, though the romance did not last. Lucia told Charles she had just the girl for him, and so it was that she went on to introduce him to Camilla Shand, later Camilla Parker Bowles, and now the Queen Consort, the great love of his life. A very personal and publicly significant moment in Charles's life was when he was 20 years old in the summer of 1969. After intense instruction in the Welsh language and many months of preparation, his mother, Her Majesty the Queen, invested him as Prince of Wales.
At the main college building on the seafront, Prince Charles has done most of his work. In the language laboratory, he spent an hour each day perfecting his Welsh grammar and pronunciation. His tutor is Mr. Edward Millward, a former vice president of the Welsh Nationalist Party.
Well, this has been a crash course. It's been only part of a crash course amongst other studies. And in the short time that he's been working, he's developed a very good accent, and I'm sure it's going to stand him in very good stead from now on. Is he fluent in Welsh? Within limits, yes, he is fluent within the limits of the lessons that he's learned, but he's not completely fluent, of course. If we had Prince Charles for a year here in Aberystwyth, there's no doubt in my mind that he would be completely fluent at the end of that year.
Mr. Millward, to what extent do you think Prince Charles has helped to popularise the Welsh language?
I've had letters from many people in Wales and from outside Wales. I've had letters from the United States of America, for example, from Welsh Americans who have Welsh predecessors, ancestors, and they want to learn Welsh as well. There seems to be a worldwide interest as well as a very keen and added interest in Wales today.
During the 9 weeks, the Prince's home has been room number 95 in Pantycelyn Hall of Residence. In an identical room next door is third-year student Geraint Evans, who was given the job of looking after Prince Charles.
As to what sort of student he is, he's a very hard-working student, which perhaps is unusual in this place. He's also a very natural student. You know, this might sound strange. You wouldn't describe a student as natural, but you have to describe him as being natural. He's made a very hard effort to get on with people, and it's been very easy for all concerned, I think, this term.
Has it been possible for you to make a friend of him?
As far as it was ever possible, I think it made there's been certain friendship between us. Perhaps it'd be fair to call him an acquaintance. The only occasion where perhaps it could go further than this, he did about 4 weeks ago come home to tea with me, and you know, he's very natural and very easygoing then.
Mr. Evans, you're a committed nationalist and one of those who would not support the investiture, but has your opinion of Prince Charles been changed, been modified during his 9 weeks here?
To the ceremony, no, but to the person, yes. I certainly have considerable respect and considerable sympathy with him in this ceremony, but the rest of the paraphernalia, my attitude hasn't changed.
Carnarvon waits like a bride for her wedding, gaily dressed for the big moment.
but anxious too that something could go wrong, though every precaution has been taken to make sure that it doesn't. As traffic jams block the town, Army bomb disposal experts are on the alert. To prepare for the ceremony, 5 years' local work has been crammed into 12 months. £5,000 worth of paint has been given away free, and all the shops in the town centre have been given a facelift. Along the side streets, which the Queen and Prince will never see, the bunting is out.
Although Charles had been Prince of Wales for some years, it wasn't until the 1st of July 1969 that he was invested by the Queen.
Every shop window proclaims the investiture, and every shopkeeper has been doing good business. Although there are 160 officially approved souvenirs, shoppers can choose among hundreds of other investiture trinkets. Carnarvon expects 250,000 people by Tuesday. Carnarvon has gone to a lot of trouble. Rates went up last year by 1 6pence. What kind of return can the town expect? I asked the Mayor, Alderman Ivor Bowen Griffiths.
And the return is that we've created this kind of spirit where we now have a people, I think, who will act as a pressure group on us councillors and tell us, look boys, you've started, you can't stop. You've started creating the new Carnarvon, carry on boys and create the new Carnarvon, this is what we want.
When the time came for his investiture, he pledged his allegiance to the Queen at Carnarvon Castle and made an address to the nation in Welsh. For the most part, the ceremony was very well received by the Welsh people. The monarch is head of the armed forces, and it has always been a great tradition of the royal family that each and every member should engage in active service and lead by example, playing more than just a symbolic role. Famously, the Queen was the first female member of the royal family to serve full-time on active service as a member of the ATS during World War II.
And at the King's request, is being treated just like any other trainee. Now visited by her parents and sister Margaret Rose at a training station in southern England, she shows them she knows a fan belt from a spark plug all right and isn't afraid to get her hands dirty. Her father gave her an officer's commission early in March. Papa and Mama seem to approve, too. Daughter is the first woman member of the royal family to join the services full-time.
Prince Philip too was an active member of the Royal Navy during World War II. So for Charles, it was an important next step for him, as heir to the throne and future head of the armed forces. During his time studying at Cambridge University, Charles received flying lessons from the RAF. He went on to RAF Cranwell in Lincolnshire to train as a jet pilot, with his passing out parade in September 1971. Just as his great-grandfathers, his grandfather, and his father, he went on to pursue a naval career, taking on a 6-week course at the Royal Naval College in Dartmouth. Charles served on the guided missile destroyer HMS Norfolk, and then went on to serve on 2 frigates, the HMS Minerva from 1972 to 1973, and the HMS Jupiter in 1974.
In steaming heat, Prince Charles's frigate, HMS Minerva, edged her way into Nassau Harbour. A few minutes before, he had formally ended his duties as one of the ship's navigation officers and taken on the role again of His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, with his personal standard broken from the mast. In the months that he's been with Minerva in the Caribbean, he several times visited the Bahamas Islands, but this was the first time he'd made an official visit. To get to Rawson's Place, where the welcome speeches would be made, the Prince walked at speed through an aisle of shouting, yelling Bahamians, with security men running in front to clear a path for him. If it was all a bit confused, the Prince showed no sign of being put out by it. The speeches were from a dais placed in front of the old Nassau landmark, the statue of the Prince's great-great-great-grandmother, and were brief to the relief of those in full dress with the temperature in the 90s.
I'll be looking forward with eager anticipation to visiting Nassau.
There will be 5 days of ceremonial engagements before Prince Charles rejoins Minerva next Wednesday for 2 more months of Caribbean patrol as a naval lieutenant.
Prince Charles stepped out from the Fleet Air Arms headquarters at Yeovilton in Somerset today in perfect flying weather for his first hour's instruction at the controls of a Wessex Mark V helicopter. It's the start of a 3.5-month flying course, at the end of which he'll be qualified, like his father Prince Philip, to fly helicopters, including those belonging to the Queen's flight. With his instructor, Lieutenant Commander Alan McGregor, the Prince inspected the helicopter before climbing inside. He seemed already familiar with the controls and was relaxed and cheerful before this, his first dual-control training flight. After about 18 hours of instruction, Lieutenant the Prince of Wales, as he's officially known, will make his first solo flight. He'll also do mountain flying, armaments training, including the firing of guided missiles, and emergency escape drill from a cockpit that's immersed in water and turned upside down.
For the last 10 months of his active service in the Navy, on the 9th of February 1976, Charles took command of the coastal mine hunter, HMS Bronington.
If later on I'm to be associated with all three services, it'd be a very good idea to do an attachment with each one. I think it gives one a very useful experience of responsibility and discipline. I think responsibility is the most important thing. Is the actual trust that's put in you to deal with other people, and the feeling that they can perhaps put their trust in you as well.
On the 11th of June 1977, when appointed Colonel-in-Chief of the Parachute Regiment, Charles asked to take part in the parachute training course. He felt he could not look them in the eye or wear the regiment's beret and wings badge unless he had completed the course. Charles said, "I felt I should lead from the front, or at least be able to do some of the things that one expects others to do for the country."
It really is a great privilege to be with you today in my 40th year as your Colonel-in-Chief. When appointed to the position, I felt I couldn't look your predecessors in the eye or even dream of wearing the red beret without doing the parachute course. This threw the cat among the proverbial pigeons. But in the end, I was allowed to join parachute training course 841A at Rise Norton.
On the 16th of June 2012, Charles was appointed the most senior ranks of Field Marshal, Admiral of the Fleet and Marshal of the RAF in the 3 UK Armed Services. As future king, Charles was focused on finding an appropriate wife. He was determined to marry by the age of 30 and continue the noble and ancient lineage through his own heirs. In the 1970s, Charles was referred to as the most eligible bachelor in the world, and after searching far and wide for the perfect match, he met his future wife when his ex-girlfriend, Sarah, introduced him to Lady Diana Spencer in 1977. Quite famously, Sarah takes credit for the introduction, saying, "I introduced them. I'm Cupid." At the time, he thought she was a very jolly and amusing and attractive 16-year-old. They met again a year after the death of Lord Mountbatten in 1980. Diana, now a couple of years older, was very sympathetic to Charles about his loss, which is said to have made him consider her as a possible wife. Charles invited Diana to Balmoral, where the Queen, Prince Philip, and the Queen Mother all received Diana very well. Even Camilla gave Prince Charles the nod of approval. She thought Diana was an ideal candidate. Their courtship attracted a lot of attention from the press, the media chasing Diana wherever she went.
She now faced possibly the most daunting initiation test for would-be members of the royal family, ordeal by the media. Her flat came under siege. She was followed wherever she went. Even under this pressure, she stayed calm, and in doing so, she won respect.
How well are you coping with all the press attention?
Well, as you can see, you can tell.
Are you bearing up with it quite well, though? Because it must be quite a strain with all of us after you.
Well, it is, naturally.
And you're coping with it all right, though? You seem to be doing very well.
Well, I'm still around.
Is there any possibility of any announcement of your marriage in the near future? Can you tell me?
Can you tell me if there's any possibility? But I'm not going to say anything, afraid.
Right, but Prince Charles did give us a hint himself. He said we wouldn't have to wait too long. In February 1981, the waiting was over. Buckingham Palace announced that Prince Charles and Lady Diana were engaged. The ring was a sapphire surrounded by diamonds. The couple looked happy and relaxed, delighted, like everyone else, that a wedding would take place. Earl Spencer and Lady Diana's stepmother celebrated among the crowds outside the palace gates. Inside, Lady Diana was facing up to a future she could hardly have dreamt of.
Yesterday you were a nanny looking after children. Now you're about to marry the Prince of Wales, and one day you would, in all likelihood, be Queen. It's a tremendous change for someone, if I may say, of 19 to make all of a sudden, the transition.
It is, but I've had a small run out to it all in the last 6 months. And next to Prince Charles, I know I can't go wrong. He's there with me.
The months between the engagement and the wedding were hectic, often exhilarating, sometimes trying.
Oh, Cameron!
She had to learn the restrictions of royal life. Never again would she be able to walk quietly down to the shops. Prince Charles had to keep the engagements he'd accepted before the announcement of the engagement, and this meant some separation. Diana had to accept this and do her best to hide her feelings.
Now, if you watch that piece of footage when Prince Charles is asked, "Are you in love, sir?" Princess Diana's beaming, and she's giggling, saying, "Yes, yes, yes." And he says, "Whatever love is." And she looks at him as if to say, "What are you talking about? Don't you know what love is?" That was the problem from the beginning. Charles didn't really know what love was.
And I suppose in love.
Of course.
Whatever in love means.
Well, it
you can put your own interpretation.
Obviously means two very happy people.
Yes.
Again, congratulations.
Well, from us, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Very kind.
The weeks before the wedding were happy ones. The couple attended many events as wedding fever gripped the nation. The more she attended, the better she coped.
In July that year, Charles and Diana would enter a marriage that would have the whole world besotted. They made their way to St. Paul's Cathedral with a congregation of 3,500 people and 2 million people lining Diana's route from Clarence House.
A quick look all along the route, see what it looks like as more and more people, as you've been telling us, are out and about. The best places are filling up, and everyone's making sure it's going to be a great day. Buckingham Palace, which has seen so many royal brides since the young Queen Victoria was its first, marrying Prince Albert 141 years ago. The royal carriages, the Queen's procession and Prince Charles's little procession will drive down the leafy Mall to Admiralty Arch in the distance. And 5 minutes after the Prince of Wales has passed, Lady Diana and her father will come out from Clarence House in the glass coach, just with police outriders, for she's not royal yet, and will follow her husband-to-be to St. Paul's. Once through Admiralty Arch into Trafalgar Square. And next the carriages will bowl past St. Clement Danes, the Air Force Church, and Gladstone's statue. And though Temple Bar is the border between the City of Westminster and the City of London, the Queen won't stop for any ceremony there today. She'll just drive straight on into Fleet Street, which has done its best, though not perhaps a spectacular best with the bunting. It'll be keeping its most colourful words for tomorrow morning's papers. All the troops along the way from here will be from regiments of which Prince Charles is Colonel-in-Chief. The Cheshire Regiment, the Gordon Highlanders, the Parachute Regiment. All will be here in half companies. And from the Commonwealth too, from Canada, the Winnipeg Rifles and the Royal Regiment of Canada. From Australia, the Royal Australian Armoured Corps. They'll be lining the route all the way to St. Paul's, to the steps and the west doorway of St. Paul's and the red carpet. Just a little while to go before this St. Paul's meets its first royal bride, Lady Diana. And the great door is not yet open.
She was still Lady Di, but only just. She was about to become the first English girl in 500 years to marry a Prince of Wales. The eyes of the world were on her, and she knew it.
It was a day full of anticipation and excitement. Accompanied by her father, John Spencer, Diana travelled to St. Paul's Cathedral in the glass carriage. With father on her arm, she then walked the 3.5 minutes up the aisle.
She seemed remarkably free from nerves, at the age of 20, beginning a new and very different life. He said, "You look wonderful." She said, "Wonderful for you." The service was followed by the crowd outside in the sunshine.
I require and charge you both, as you will answer at the dreadful day of judgment when the secrets of all hearts shall be disclosed, that if either of you know any impediment why ye may not be lawfully joined together in matrimony, ye do now confess it.
It went without a hitch, almost.
I, Diana Francis.
I, Diana Francis.
Take thee, Charles Philip Arthur George.
Take thee, Philip Charles Arthur George.
To my wedded husband.
To my wedded husband.
To have and to hold.
To have and to hold.
From this day forward.
From this day forward.
According to God's holy law.
According to God's holy law.
And thereto I give thee my troth.
And thereto I give thee my troth.
She was no longer a children's helper. She was the Princess of Wales, married to the heir to the throne. Another chapter in the 1,000-year history of the British royal family had been written.
Charles and Diana were keen to start a family, and in 1982, Prince William was born. A couple of years later, in 1984, Prince Harry was born. Diana was well known to be a very hands-on mother, but Charles was a supportive parent too. Charles and Diana's marriage was not entirely a successful one. Whilst they built a family together with sons William and Harry, the relationship between Charles and Diana was not destined to last. The couple separated in 1992, divorcing in 1996. After Diana's death, Charles had to step up and take more responsibility for William and Harry. Though the young princes were growing up and becoming more independent, it was undoubtedly a very challenging time for both of them. William and Harry have praised their father publicly, and it is clear he has successfully set a strong example of the importance of hard work and generosity to others.
Some of my earliest memories relate to times that my parents spoke to me, or even better, showed me what it meant to have both privilege and responsibilities. From my father, I learned how central charity was to his life and his sense of purpose. The Prince's Trust is not an arm's length organisation for my father. He cares deeply about the Prince's Trust because it is a living projection of his values. As a young child, I recall evening after evening my father's diligence and compassion as he applied himself to answering thousands of letters and reading endless reports in order to stay on top of his ambition to do all he could to help the underprivileged. Without my realising it, what my parents were doing was instilling in me and Harry a lifelong habit to put charity at the heart of our lives.
Many of the issues William and I now work on
are subjects we were introduced to by our father growing up. His passion and dedication are remarkable, and seeing so many of you here today, I cannot fail but to be in awe of the drive he has had for so many years to contribute to the enrichment of society, both in this country and around the world. So, Pa, while I know that you've asked that today not be about you, you must forgive me if I don't listen to you, much like when I was younger. And instead, I ask everyone here to say a huge thank you to you for your incredible work over nearly 50 years.
Charles had rekindled an old spark with former girlfriend Camilla Parker Bowles, much to the dismay and disapproval of royal courtiers. But they went on to marry in 2005, and their partnership has endured, becoming widely accepted by the public.
When it comes to things he cares about the country. You know, he cares about the young. He cares about the environment. You know, these are big passions for him.
King Charles has been no stranger to hard work. In the reporting year 2017 to 2018, he undertook over 600 engagements in the UK and around the world, which is not unusual for Charles's working year. He has visited 44 Commonwealth countries, many more than once, and has visited over 100 countries worldwide. Since leaving the armed forces, Charles very carefully carved out his role as heir apparent and did not simply wait for his final role.
It's all about timings. That's the important bit. That's what we were drummed into us, that whether it be meals, meetings, whatever it might be, you've got to make sure that things are done by a certain point so that he's able to then carry on doing his job.
Charles took his title as Prince of Wales very seriously, maintaining a close and enduring relationship with Wales. Charles and Camilla made a visit to Wales every summer for a busy week packed full of engagements, often linked with his charities. Charles is always ready to get stuck in. So on a visit to BBC Scotland, with his usual charm, the then Prince became a weatherman for the day.
I'm delighted to say we've got a new member of our weather team tonight. Let me hand over to him now. Your Highness.
Well, it's an unsettled picture as we head towards the end of the week. This afternoon it'll be cold, wet and windy across most of Scotland. We're under the influence of low pressure, and this weather front pushing northwards is bringing cloud and outbreaks of rain. The rain, of course, will be heaviest over the borders and around Edinburgh, where it could lead to difficult conditions on the roads. In the west, rain will be lighter and patchier. There will maybe a few drier interludes over Dumfries House in Ayrshire. Aha! There'll be snow for the higher ground of the Highlands and Aberdeenshire. The potential for a few flurries over Balmoral, who the hell wrote this script, as the afternoon goes on. The best of the drier and brighter weather will, of course, be over the Northern Isles and the far north of the mainland. So a little hazy sunshine to the Castle of May and Caithness, but a cold day everywhere with temperatures of just 8 Celsius and a brisk northeasterly wind. Thank God it isn't a bank holiday.
And Your Royal Highness, how do you feel he did?
I think he's a very good weather forecaster.
Yes,
he's always been longing to do it. He watches it every night. We've always thought he'd be rather good.
I never thought that at all.
Yes.
His official duties do not always run smoothly, however. While visiting Australia in January 1994, 2 shots from a starting pistol were fired at him on Australia Day by David Kang in protest of the treatment of several hundred Cambodian asylum seekers held in detention camps.
Darling Harbour brimmed with anticipation of what was to be the highlight of Australia Day celebrations. Prince Charles was about to present awards to the state's top HSC students, but before he could utter a word, chaos. Dignitaries assembled on the stage were the first to the Prince's rescue, with no less than the Premier, John Fay, and Australian of the Year, Ian Kiernan, tackling the man. The Prince was shielded by his personal bodyguard, who kicked a starter's pistol out of the man's hand.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, everything is totally under control.
Unharmed, His Royal Highness remained remarkably composed, continuing his official duties as the man was taken away for questioning. Within 2 hours of the attack, Police Minister Terry Griffiths was playing it down.
Let's not dramatise it by suggesting that there was an attempted assassination. There was not. It was a stunt.
But the charges were serious. 23-year-old David Kang was taken to the Sydney Police Centre and charged with attacking an international protected person, threatening to attack him, common assault, affray, possession of a firearm and using a firearm. This morning, the Macquarie University student appeared in Central Local Court applying for bail. The court heard the attack on Prince Charles was deliberate and planned by Kang to the extent that he bought the pistol and secured an itinerary for the royal visit.
So when I created the Prince's Trust in 1976 to help improve the lives of disadvantaged young people, it was because I was so acutely aware of the challenges that they faced. And over the years, some of the challenges have changed, but the overall mission of giving people self-confidence, self-esteem, and better opportunities remains the same. And in that time, we have helped over 1 million young people. And I always used to get so annoyed that it hadn't got to 1 million long ago, because we had to keep counting people who were still going through the system, even though we were actually helping 50,000 people a year. I thought, I know my maths is bad, but... So we've helped over 1 million young people transform their lives, and the Prince's Trust now works in 18 countries across the Commonwealth and beyond.
In 1976, Charles founded the Prince's Trust, a charitable organisation to help vulnerable young people. Originally started using funds from his own Royal Navy severance pay, amounting to just over £7,000, the charity has gone on to help over 1 million people. It remains one of the biggest successes during his career as Prince of Wales.
You can't teach confidence. You have to give confidence to kids. This is really what the Prince's Trust is about, I think, at base level. It's about giving people the confidence to try something that their peer group might not think is cool or interesting, but if they think it's interesting, if they think it has value, then they should be given the confidence to go and do it. And it's about getting to these kids when they're in environments that aren't conducive to those sorts of things, and pulling them out of that environment and saying, now come over here, let's do this, because I can show you something that's better.
The charity helps those aged between 11 and 30 with issues such as homelessness, mental health problems, or trouble with the law.
I would like to take this opportunity to say to you, Charles, how proud I am of everything you have accomplished with the Trust and the way you personally have inspired this organisation. It is a very great pleasure for me, therefore, to present a Royal Charter to the Prince's Trust in recognition of its outstanding achievements over nearly a quarter of a century.
None of this, after 40 years, and I hope we'll keep it going for a bit, would be possible. But I'm only as good as the people who do all the marvellous things around the country, all the fantastic staff, and all our young ambassadors and celebrity ambassadors and so many others. And I've said year after year just how proud I am of those young ambassadors and how they've totally changed their lives and now are doing all sorts of wonderful things. And as long as I've got a few marbles left remaining, I shall do my best to go on investing in the future of this remarkable country. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Charles's father, Prince Philip, was a keen environmentalist. His activism saved a species from extinction and raised unparalleled awareness on the blight of environmental pollution. Inspired by his father's mission, Charles too has dedicated his life to protecting our environment.
It's
totally useless for a lot of well-meaning people to wring their hands in conference and to point out the dangers of pollution or destruction of the countryside if no one is willing or capable of taking any action. The impassioned speeches will be so much effluent under the bridge unless it is followed by drastic political action. Well, sir, time is fast running out, and it remains to be seen whether those in political authority can shoulder their responsibilities in time and act quickly enough to relieve a situation which grows more serious every day.
Charles first spoke publicly about his concerns with the current environmental situation in terms of pollution and use of plastics in 1970, and had frequently been ridiculed for his opinions and interests, which he is now praised for and believed to have been forward-thinking.
Ladies and gentlemen, the battle against climate change is surely the most defining and pivotal challenge of our times. Even in a world full of daunting perils and crises, it is hard to imagine anything that poses a greater challenge and opportunity for humanity. We are running out of time. How many times have I found myself saying this over recent years? We cannot delay, regroup, prevaricate, or wait for more and better information. We should compare the planet under threat of climate change to a sick patient. No doctor would wait for 100% certainty while a dying patient slipped away. We cannot ignore the symptoms and should act now to restore the health of the planet before it is too late.
The Queen herself has acknowledged the great impact of the work carried out by Prince Philip, the then Prince Charles and Prince William in environmental causes and climate change.
This is a duty I'm especially happy to discharge, as the impact of the environment on human progress was a subject close to the heart of my dear late husband, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. I remember well that in 1969, he told an academic gathering, "If the world pollution situation is not critical at the moment, it is as certain as anything can be that the situation will become increasingly intolerable within a very short time. It is a source of great pride to me that the leading role my husband played in encouraging people to protect our fragile planet lives on through the work of our eldest son, Charles, and his eldest son, William. I could not be more proud of them."
Buckingham Palace has announced the death of Queen Elizabeth II, the longest reigning monarch in British history.
The Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen Consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow.
On the 8th of September 2022, Charles's life would change forever. A moment he would later say he had dreaded his whole life. Buckingham Palace announced the Queen was under medical supervision, and one by one, members of the royal family were making their way to Balmoral to see the Queen. Charles and Anne made it back to Balmoral to be with their beloved mother as she peacefully passed away. The end of the second great Elizabethan era, and a time of tremendous sadness for the family. There is no pause in the continuity of the monarchy, and following his mother's example, Charles stepped into his duties as king. After greeting crowds at Buckingham Palace, Charles and Camilla walked through the Golden Gates as king and queen for the first time. The following day, Charles made his first televised broadcast as king, making a tribute to his beloved late mother, Queen Elizabeth II.
She made sacrifices for duty. Her dedication and devotion as sovereign never wavered, through times of change and progress, through times of joy and celebration, and through times of sadness and loss. In her life of service, we saw that abiding love of tradition, together with that fearless embrace of progress, which makes us great as nations. The affection, admiration, and respect she inspired became the hallmark of her reign.
Charles has great delivery. I mean, he's practically like a Shakespearean actor. Well, he was a Shakespearean actor at one time. So his delivery of all these speeches is completely brilliant. And I think he writes most of them himself. And he delivers it with superb timing and superb emotion.
Queen Elizabeth was a life well lived, a promise with destiny kept, and she is mourned most deeply in her passing. That promise of lifelong service I renew to you all today.
On Saturday, the 10th of September, the Accession Council gathered at St. James's Palace. It was time to proclaim the new king.
The Prince Charles Philip Arthur George is now, by the death of our late sovereign of happy memory, become our only lawful and rightful liege lord, Charles III.
God save the king!
For the first time in history, this historic ceremony was filmed. The Privy Council proclaimed His Majesty as King Charles III.
My mother's reign was unequalled in its duration, its dedication, and its devotion. Even as we grieve, we give thanks for this most faithful life.
In the days following his mother's death, Charles visited the different nations. In a time where families would ordinarily grieve together in private, Charles made himself very visible, just like his mother did. He met with people waiting in the famous queue to see the Queen lying in state, and visited people across the country who were grieving too. Charles, along with his brothers and sister, solemnly held a vigil at St. Giles's Cathedral, and later at Westminster Hall. A touching and difficult moment for the siblings. On the 19th of September, Charles played an important part in the late Queen's funeral. King Charles walked behind the coffin, alongside his siblings and sons. A poignant moment.
When it was finally announced that the Queen had died, there was an extraordinary outpouring of grief amongst the nation, because, you know, the majority of the Queen's subjects had never known another monarch. And it was kind of the end of an era. It wasn't just her death, it was the end of an era. It was end of the Elizabethan age as we know it. And of course it was all so dramatic and so beautifully staged that made it even more poignant. The soldiers, the wonderful music, the people that used to work for the Queen, walking behind her coffin was very, very moving. And the crowd, we know, was crying. Or they were crying, or they were cheering, or they were just silent, completely silent. You could hear a pin drop. I remember when Diana died, and the day of her funeral, you could just hear the birds. You couldn't hear anything else. No sound from the crowd. And that is a sort of real high emotion.
Arriving at St. George's Chapel, a smaller funeral service commenced. For the first time, the chorus sang "God Save the King." Charles, obviously so moved by the moment, struggled to hold back his tears. He is the sovereign. He is the king. The weight of the crown is now on his shoulders.
The first rendition in St. George's Chapel of God Save the King, I think he nearly lost it. Because it was so emotional, and the strong voices and the choir and everybody really, really meant God Save the King. And I think that was extraordinary for Charles.
On May the 6th, the first coronation in 70 years will take place. Though said to be scaled down compared to Queen Elizabeth's ceremony, the pomp and tradition will still feature. Charles and Camilla will be crowned King and Queen. Following his mother's death, Charles's life and responsibilities have changed. As king, he is no longer able to speak so freely on his passions and opinions. He instead has to remain unbiased. King Charles has taken on his responsibilities with ease, dealing with the famous Red Box each day, meeting with prime ministers, presidents, and state officials, and attending various engagements. He has taken his new role in his stride. King Charles III. A king in waiting for so much of his life, Charles has been able to learn from one of the greatest monarchs Britain has ever known. Following in the footsteps of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, Charles's sense of duty and dedication to service will likely define his reign too, as it has for so much of his life. In his own right, Charles has given so much of his working life to helping people and to protecting and conserving the environment. A compassionate and considerate king, Charles will continue the great legacy of the House of Windsor.
And with the passing of the second Elizabethan age, we usher in a new era in the magnificent history of our great country, exactly as Her Majesty would have wished, by saying the words, God Save the King.
I too now solemnly pledge myself, throughout the remaining time God grants me, to uphold the constitutional principles at the heart of our nation. And wherever you may live in the United Kingdom, or in the realms and territories across the world, and whatever may be your background or beliefs, I shall endeavor to serve you with loyalty, respect, and love, as I have throughout my life.